Many consider Hans Christian Andersen to be unfortunate. His modest beginnings, the impoverished childhood spent cramped into a small room with his family, the fear instilled in him during youth by his grandfather's mental illness, and his adult interest in the same sex, combined with a mixture of fascination and fear of the opposite sex, ultimately led to his loneliness. His fairy tales, which show sympathy for the poor and mockery of the powerful, speak for the underprivileged. However, Andersen's true story is that of a poor child from humble beginnings who found ultimate success through persistent effort, as in his beloved fairy tale, The Ugly Duckling. From his schooling onward, including his travels and writing, he received support from the upper class and even royalty. He received a government stipend for most of his life, and before his death, a statue was prepared in his honor. He was a successful mainstream writer. Fairy tales accounted for only a small part of his work, yet they earned him lasting fame. Biography. Hans Christian Andersen was born on April 2, 1805, in the small town of Odense, Denmark. His family was poor but loving. Hans's father, a shoemaker, loved books and often read stories to him, sparking his imagination. His mother, a washerwoman, was hardworking and deeply religious. Although they didn't have much money, his parents encouraged his creativity. When Hans was just 11 years old, his father died, leaving the family in an even tougher situation. Hans had to leave school and work to support his mother. Despite these challenges, he dreamed of a brighter future. At 14, Hans moved to Copenhagen, Denmark's capital, to pursue his dreams of becoming an actor, singer, or dancer. However, he soon realized that his true talent was in storytelling and writing. At 17, he published his dramatic poem Alf Sol, showcasing his talent. As a result, the Royal Theatre sent him for free education for over 5 years. In 1828, he enrolled at the University of Copenhagen. After graduating, he remained unemployed, mainly supporting himself through writing. In 1838, he received a writer's grant, an annual, unofficial stipend of 200 kroner from the government. Andersen's literary career started in 1822 with writing plays. His writing improved considerably after he entered university. He published many travelogues, musical comedies, and collections of poems and dramas. His novel Improvisatoren, published in 1835, is seen as his best work. His fairy tales are what made him famous worldwide. Andersen's fairy tales has been translated into over 150 languages and published around the globe. Andersen was the first writer in Western literary history to treat fairy tales as serious literature. With a deep understanding of Western tradition, he skillfully incorporated many religious themes and metaphors into his works, making them more meaningful than traditional fairy tales and raising the genre to new heights. Andersen integrated Christian ideals of kindness, love, and sacrifice into his fairy tales, while also conveying to children the concepts of original sin and the redemption of the soul. His initial attempts at writing fairy tales began with rewriting stories he had heard as a child, and later developed into a series of bold, innovative tales. Many of Andersen's stories have bittersweet or sad endings, which some readers find surprising for children's stories. For example, The Little Mermaid does not marry the prince and instead turns into sea foam. Some critics say these endings are too dark for young readers. They think these stories are actually intended for adults. However, Andersen's persistence paid off. He created a new style and content for fairy tales. He received royal honors during his lifetime and was highly praised for bringing joy to one generation of children across Europe. In fact, many parents and children worldwide have read his fairy tales since then. The stories continue to be reimagined in new art forms, such as film and television. Although fairy tales are a small part of Andersen's overall work, they are why readers around the world remember him. Andersen never married and died at 70. Even before his death, people had started plans to build a large statue in his honor. He was deeply insecure, believing he was not only unattractive but also poor. He was hesitant to meet strangers. Just before his death, Andersen told a young writer, I have paid a huge, even immeasurable, price for my fairy tales. In reality, aside from his humble beginnings, he achieved fame early, had a wide social circle, and was not poor. He was a well-known writer of his time. The reason he remained unmarried was that he was bisexual, which was neither openly discussed nor accepted during his era. His end cannot be called unlucky. His personal loneliness at the end of his life was a tragedy of that time. Hans Christian Andersen's life was marked by challenges, creativity, and inspiration. From his humble beginnings in Denmark to his rise as a globally renowned author, his journey demonstrates the power of perseverance and imagination. His works continue to inspire readers of all ages, imparting timeless lessons about kindness, courage, and self-belief. Although he was a complex and sometimes misunderstood figure, his legacy as a master storyteller endures, captivating the hearts of millions around the world. Main works. Andersen is best known for his fairy tales. Children and adults have loved these stories for generations. In terms of writing technique, he pioneered a child's perspective. He imagined the adult narrator as a child, using a child's way of speaking in his works, direct, natural, and aligned with children's thinking and psychological growth in developing his themes. He employed vivid yet plausible, magical yet consistent storylines to express deep truths. Andersen wrote more than 150 fairy tales, many of which have been translated into over 100 languages. His stories often include lessons about kindness, perseverance, and the power of imagination. Some of his most famous works include Thumbelina is about a tiny girl, no bigger than a thumb, who goes on a magical adventure filled with challenges and friendships. The Little Mermaid is the story of a young mermaid who dreams of living on land and falls in love with a human prince. It's a tale of love, sacrifice, and bravery. The Emperor's New Clothes is a humorous tale about a vain emperor who is tricked into wearing invisible clothes. It reminds us to think for ourselves and not always follow the crowd. The Ugly Duckling is story teaches us that beauty and worth are not always visible at first glance. It follows the journey of a little bird who grows into a beautiful swan. The Snow Queen is a story inspired by Disney's Frozen. It tells of a brave girl named Gerda who sets out to rescue her friend Kai from the icy clutches of the Snow Queen.